do you feel about those non or lower caloric alternatives that we're told are okay or healthy, like inulin for fiber, erythritol for its antioxidants, lucuma, monk fruit, stevia, yacon?
Right.
Considering they all elicit some sort of bioresponse, an insulin response, at the end of the day, you adjust for the calories, so you don't really save any calories.
That's right.
And it seems to adjust my sugar palate. So I crave these things more, even when I use these. And I love them all. What do you think?
Right. So let's start at the beginning. You started with inulin. So inulin is a soluble fiber. Inulin is found in fruit. Pectins, inulin. Okay, these are soluble fibers. These are what hold jelly together. All right. Now, soluble fiber is good, but insoluble fiber is better. Real food has both. Almonds have both. Fruit, real whole fruit, has both. You need both. The way I describe it in the book, think of it like this. You have a spaghetti colander, metal bowl with holes, right? You run the water, water runs right through. Okay, now take a blob of petroleum jelly, throw it into the center of the colander. Now run the water. Water still runs right through. Might bounce off the jelly, but still runs right through. Now take your finger and rub it all the way around the inside of that colander. Now run the water. Now the water doesn't run right through. You have created an impenetrable secondary barrier. Okay. Imagine that the petroleum jelly is the inulin and the pectin, the soluble fiber, which are globular and plug holes. Imagine that the cellulose, the stringy stuff in celery, cardboard, okay? Imagine that that's the colander. And imagine that you have the geometry of the two together in your intestine. So when you swallow a piece of whole fruit or an almond or anything like that, what you're doing is you're generating an impenetrable secondary barrier. The cellulose forms the lattice work, fishnet, if you will. The soluble fiber or globular plug the holes in that fishnet, and it creates a secondary barrier. You can actually see it on electron microscopy on the inside of the intestine, a whitish barrier. And what that whitish barrier is doing in that duodenum is it's preventing early absorption of glucose, fructose, sucrose, simple starches, so that they do not cross into the portal vein and then go to the liver, thus protecting your liver. So even though you consume the sugar of the fruit, you didn't flood your liver because of the fiber. Fiber is good. Now, if you didn't absorb it early, where does it go? Well, it goes further down the intestine. And what's in the middle of the intestine? What's in the jejunum that's not in the duodenum? The bacteria, the microbiome. Now, the microbiome can't live in the duodenum because the pH is too low, because it's still an acidic environment from the stomach. Okay, the pancreatic juice gets released at the sphincter of Oddi to mix with the food to bring the pH back up to 7.4 in the jejunum after the ligament attrites. And that's where the bacteria are. And so what you're doing is you're preventing early absorption, and therefore you're providing that food for your bacteria to be able to chew up instead of you. So even though you consumed it, even though it passed your lips, even though it counted as, quote, calories, unquote, because you ate it, guess what? You didn't get it. Another reason why calories are BS. Because it doesn't matter what you ate, it matters what you absorbed. And if you absorbed it, if you ate it with fiber, you didn't absorb it. Your bacteria chewed it up for its own purposes instead. So fiber is the key to the kingdom. But our food is fiberless food because you can't freeze fiber. I'll prove it to you. Take an orange, put it in your freezer overnight. Take it out in the morning, put it on your kitchen counter, let it thaw, try to eat it, see what you get. You get mush. Why do you get mush? Because the ice crystals macerated the cell wall, let all the water rush in. Hey, food industry knows that. They're not dumb. So what do? They squeeze it and freeze it, turn it into frozen concentrated orange juice. Now it lasts forever. Now they can sell it as a commodity. They've turned a fruit into a commodity, so they can sell it on the commodities exchange. And there's no depreciation because it's got infinite shelf life. Good for them, bad for you. So that's the issue of fiber. Now, the other question you asked me, Steve, is about artificial sweeteners. So we're just going to take them as a whole. Okay, I'm not going to break down each of the artificial sweeteners because they all suffer from the same issue. Okay, and I don't care which one you pick. You can go all the way from stevia all the way up to aspartame and everything in between. I don't give a crap. Okay, the question is, are they good? The answer is half as bad. The toxicity of one Coca-Cola equals the toxicity of 2 Diet Coca-Colas. That's the way to think of it. We now have the data to show that from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition 2018. Okay, 1 sugared Coke equals 2 Diet Cokes in terms of toxicity. Not good, just half as bad. Now, why should that be? After all, no fructose, no calories. Remember, it's not about calories, but no fructose. That should be good, right? Not so much. Here's why. You put something sweet on the tongue. Message goes tongue to brain. Sugar's coming. Message goes brain to pancreas. Sugar's coming. Get ready to release the insulin. But then the sugar never comes because it was a diet sweetener. What does the pancreas do? Does it go, oh man, I was waiting for that. I guess I'll just wait till tomorrow. Or does the pancreas go, I was waiting all day for that sugar bolus and it ain't coming. I'm going to go find me some calories to go work on. And you end up overeating instead. And it turns out the answer is the second, the latter. We now have the data to show it's the latter. And so it's actually been shown that when you consume a diet soda, you get an insulin response, although it's a smaller insulin response. But what happens is that when you eat later in the day, you actually release more insulin. And so you drive more energy into fat and you create just as much chronic metabolic disease. So basically, it's like, holding back the floodgates, but you can't hold it back forever. And so you end up with the same flood that you would have had anyway. And that's basically what happens. So ultimately, not a good answer. So half as bad. That's what the data show. Not good, half as bad.
Thanks very, very much for that. And up next, we're going to bring in a different Stephen. Let's go ahead and unmute. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, thank you for an excellent presentation. Really good. I guess a few quick questions. There are glucose monitors, but I've never heard of an insulin monitor. And then the second question would be—
Working on it.
Okay. And then the second question would be, give me an example of how you might engineer a healthy processed food.
That's a good question. So first of all, insulin monitor, we are working on it. It's not easy to do because the concentrations of insulin in the interstitial fluid are so low. But we have the technology and we're working on adapting it. I'm working with a couple of companies right now to create a continuous online wearable insulin monitor to do just that, and to team it up with the glucose and also with ketones to be able to actually give you a readout in real time of your metabolic health and what's going on inside your body. And I think this will be a huge boon to this personalized nutrition field. It's a few years away. It's not tomorrow, but it's coming. Glucose we have now, and glucose is good, but it's not enough. It's not even remotely enough. And there are companies that I'm associated with, like for instance, Levels Health and Simplex Health and a few other companies that look at glucose as being a primary driver of disease, which it is a primary driver of disease, but it's the insulin response that's the real primary driver. So the glucose is actually a proxy for the insulin. There's a book out just today, which I recommend to all of you. My colleague and friend, good friend, Jesse Inshauspe just wrote a book. You can find it on Amazon. It is called Glucose Revolution. Glucose Revolution. And it is practical tips on how to keep your blood glucose down. And if you keep your blood glucose down, that means you keep your insulin down. And that's the goal. Keep your insulin down. So take a look at that book. I recommend it highly. And I vetted all the science in it personally. How do you make processed food healthy? It's hard. Okay, it's hard. I'm not telling you it's not. It's hard. A team of 5 scientists, of which I am the head, has been working on KDD's portfolio for the last year and a half, very specifically to make specific changes in the added sugar. And we have sugar substitutes that are new, that are potentially even healthy, like for instance, allulose. There's another one out there called trehalose. We don't know enough about it yet, so we're not using that one. We are finding ways to put fiber into food in ways that are disguised, that people don't even know about. And I'm actually chief medical officer of a company that is developed a proprietary fiber that you take along with a processed food meal, and it will actually coat and envelop the processed food in your stomach so that it becomes unavailable for early absorption. In other words, we turn apple juice back into apples in the gut. And that company is called Biolumin. You can find that online, biolumin.tech. We are in clinical trials right now in order to be able to bring this to market. There are other things like adding omega-3s to food that didn't have omega-3s before. There are other things like knowing how many, what the heavy metal content and profile of the food is, and being able to actually source stuff that way. Getting rid of trans fats and omega-6s out of the diet, again, by sourcing appropriately. So there are a whole bunch of things that one can do to improve processed food. You can do it through ingredients. You can do it through the actual processing process itself. There's a company in Israel that can take juice, run the juice through a machine, and the machine has enzymes that will turn the glucose and the fructose and the sucrose into other things that are not dangerous, called Better Juice, that we're also looking at as a possible fix for the juice issue. So there are things that can be done using technology. There are ways to try to make things work. Obviously, anything that is done has to be vetted and has to be shown to be safe and to actually improve metabolic health. So none of these things are going to come out on the market until we're sure that they are actually doing what we say they are.